And we are live. We're on. We're recording. Thank you. Thank you for joining me this afternoon, this evening. And
My pleasure all the time.
it's amazing that we've got this opportunity. And when I was talking to you before about like creating these vlog slash podcast type things, I think I said to you that I wanted to explore the avenue of so many avenues of like holistic health, but with the people that I truly love. And whether I agree with everything that everybody says, it was irrelevant. I just wanted to just be a part of this big, beautiful thing, just get as much info out as we can. So I figured better, what better time or who better than to start with your beautiful self. So why don't you introduce yourself, introduce what you do, and we'll go from there.
So I'm Sarah. I have a business called Down to Birth Midwifery, as I am a midwife. I also work for a home birth practice, so I mostly look after women who are birthing at home. Through my own business, though, I provide a lot of sort of birth preparation, education, support, but also have quite a holistic sort of approach to things, something slightly different to most midwives. Bring in a lot about nutrition, breath work, spirituality. I try and bring a lot of sort of ritual into the care that I provide for women as well. So probably one of my favorite aspects is the postpartum rituals that I do for women in the early days after they've given birth, and in the weeks following as well, just to sort of bring back that ritual aspect and appreciation for the transformation that women go through during pregnancy, birth, and in the early days of parenting as well. So yeah, that's my focus mostly.
Love it. And we've connected a lot over lots of deep discussions about the journey of pregnancy and even pre-conception and the journey of women in general, in a spiritual sense, more often than not. But let's go jump in. How do we end up meeting? When did we meet, and how did we meet?
We met through yoga. Yeah. Well, actually, no, I met Cassie first, and we were sort of, we'd attended some yoga classes together and gone out for coffee afterwards, and we're chatting, and she's just like, you are the exact same as my husband and you need to meet him. And she's pretty right.
I remember coming home and she's just like, I have met the female version of you. And I'm like,
pretty much.
This girl, she's got dreads, she's into spirituality, she talks about ayahuasca, and I'm like, but yeah, I guess, like, it sounds like me.
Yeah, no, it's definitely felt very aligned. Definitely very grateful for how we crossed paths and connection we will hold forever.
I know for Cass and I, it was love at first sight.
Yeah, it so was.
I feel like I've known each other forever, but that's probably a good indication of how deep our conversations and connections go. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So hopefully we can sort of replicate that through this chat.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well, let's jump into that. You were going through the kind of aspects of holistic avenues that you provide and facilitate pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, after pregnancy, and the spiritual approach in which you facilitate that. And you mentioned in there nutrition. So that I am like super, super deep and into holistic health and providing the best nutrients for the body in all senses. So why don't you let me and everyone else listening open that up to what you would normally go through in terms of nutrition for women when going through the birthing journey or planning the birthing journey, or even just holistically as that spiritual goddess self. Yeah, give us a little bit of that.
I think nutrition is something that I've always been really interested in. It's just a natural interest that I've had, and I think we do it very poorly in the maternity system. I think just through hospital system in general, there's just not enough continuity and not enough time to really talk to women about nutrition during pregnancy or after they've had their babies. So women here don't really have, the emphasis is not put on how important it is. And it's absolutely crucial, pretty much. So
Mm.
it's sort of said that the first 1,000 days of a baby's life is the most important, but that's from the day of conception.
Mm.
So even just from for women trying to get pregnant in general, your bodies should be in optimal health, because obviously the demands of the baby during pregnancy are more than what you normally would be going through. Birth itself is a marathon, and then in the postpartum period, especially if you're breastfeeding, nutrition actually becomes, even more important. You burn more calories when you're breastfeeding than what you do when you're even growing a baby. So what you're putting into your body is really, really important. In the West, especially, we have ridiculously unacceptable amounts of postpartum depression among women after they've had their babies. A lot of it is sort of due to their own mental health history or due to the birth that they've had. But ultimately, the underlying cause is usually nutrition. And it's because women are completely depleted by the time they've had their baby, because they haven't, started preconception with optimal nutrition, and, vitamin nutrient levels going into pregnancy. They might have had a challenging pregnancy where they can't really eat too much, or they can only eat really restricted things. But for the vast majority of women, they have little kids to look after. They're just so busy that they don't put that emphasis on themselves and what they're putting into their body, especially when, there's no education around how important that actually is. So ultimately, when you're eating during pregnancy, there's this, age old, eating for two. But like, I think that's a total misconception. I think putting on too much weight during pregnancy can actually result in a lot of pregnancy related health issues for yourself and your baby. So I usually say to women, during pregnancy, you should be eating twice as well than what you're normally eating, not eating twice as much. I really start off with a basic premise of eating, whole food, so nothing pre-made, packaged, or processed, and just focusing on like the main ones. Obviously, iron is a big emphasis, and I think that's just the main thing that everybody knows about. They're like, oh, I should take iron during pregnancy, but not everyone even absorbs synthetic iron. So you should really be starting with your food and then supplementing there on out if that's what you really need to be doing. You shouldn't just be supplementing on a whim either. You should really have your bloods done. Definitely recommend working with like naturopaths during pregnancy if that's something that's available to you, or at least like someone like myself who's like quite a bit more holistic and actually has an understanding of nutrition and how best to meet those needs like during pregnancy. There's a whole bunch of really important like vitamins and nutrients that kind of go unrecognized during pregnancy. So one that I usually get women to focus on is omegas. So particularly omega from fish. It's absolutely crucial for the brain development of your baby, and you should be taking it postpartum when you're breastfeeding as well, because you're still helping those fatty acids be passed on to your baby's brain. Like, it is detrimental having low levels of omegas in your body and not passing those on to your baby when that's what they really need. Iodine as well is another one, really important for the brain and nervous system development of the baby. And iodine, well, it's why we have iodized salt. Like, as a population, it's probably one of the ones that are up there that most people are actually quite deficient in. I think even the way we address low iron is really kind of poor. We don't look at, our first go-to is like, take a synthetic iron supplement, but we don't really put much attention into all the other underlying factors that can contribute to having low iron as well. So if I'm talking to a woman, she's got low iron and I've looked into that, I always look into her vitamin B levels as well, because they sort of work synergetically together, which is a really uncommon one to be looked for during pregnancy. Vitamin D is sort of, I'd say about 50-50, like GPs check for that in early pregnancy, but it can actually result in sort of like, it's correlated to gestational diabetes or mental health illness in babies when women have low levels of vitamin D. It's just so much broader than the initial sort of low iron that we all kind of seem really, really focused on. I'm also really big on probiotics, or at least really increasing foods in your diet that have good bacteria in them. It's something we're learning so much more about now and how important it is. So when women have, like dysbiosis and an imbalance of bacteria in all different parts of their body, it has effects on the baby as well, because ultimately you're the one who's providing the environment. You want to be providing the most optimal like environment. So there is some things linked to poor outcomes in the babies, like preterm birth has been linked to a dysbiosis of like vaginal bacteria. The babies can get exposed to different sorts of bacteria, like when women are giving birth. So trying to optimize your own bacteria as well. Even the bacteria in the mouth and the bacteria in the gut kind of, have some sort of effect on your growing baby. So really important, and not at all even discussed kind of aspect in antenatal care. Also, it's found that taking probiotics in the last trimester of pregnancy can potentially lower the incidence of allergy and like asthmatic conditions in babies. So if that's something that runs in your family, I think it's something worth investing in as well.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting you say that. I've worked with people before and I don't normally try to cross lanes when it comes to the pregnancy preparation, but pre-pregnancy, when I find that I've been working with women looking to conceive, and then they're just aware that something's going on that's not quite right. The allergies one is a big one. You touched on a little bit the gut health, essentially, which was that's kind of broad term of what you're talking about with the the bacteria within the body as well, not just within the sexual reproductive area, but more the stomach as well, our second brain. And then the bioavailability of those supplements that you're talking about. So those three things that you touched on just there. So I'll start with the language. So, and I've had this conversation with my wife. Like she grew up with allergies and still has some allergies, and was always concerned when conceiving that our children were going to have the same allergies. Now, in itself, you're already creating a language in the nervous system and passing that through gestation. So essentially, your child is predisposed to the idea that you've already kind of solidified within your being. And when I've worked with women before, getting women or even the partners, men as well, to understand the framework of language in itself and how we are prepping, not just physically and nutritionally, but how we are prepping emotionally and mentally as well, it's quite tricky, because when I'm working with these people, and I can probably guess you're the same, they're also seeing like an external party, let's say a doctor, a GP, or someone that might not have the information that we're providing, and then it's just meeting in the middle. We're trying to achieve this outcome here, and then the doctor's saying, well, you need to take iron, you need to take this supplement, you need to get iron injections, and like it's just chaos. How do you get around it? Like,
Yeah, I feel like you've kind of like touched on a whole other sort of conversation there, which is like a huge topic. But yeah, the language thing is absolutely huge, and it's a huge thing that I work with, especially. I've worked with women trying to conceive around language and things that have been said to them, but preparing for birth is a huge one. So, we all know the general consensus around birth in our society is like, oh, it's hard, you can't do it, something's going to go wrong, you can't do it without an epidural, like why would you even try, blah blah blah. Like it's super negative. So trying to come in and then change that narrative for a woman is absolutely huge, especially women who have had maybe a birth in the past that has been had high levels of like medical intervention. Potentially they've had a cesarean section before and the doctor's like, you'll never birth vaginally. Like it's just like planting all these negative seeds, and then that's the narrative that we start playing out in our head. But what I found is sometimes for women, they literally need one person to tell them that they can do it. So usually that's me, and I say it in a way that I'm like, well, of course you can. Like, why wouldn't you be able to?
Yeah.
And it's just like we've made falling pregnant, especially for women who who that's taking a longer time for, or women who are aiming for a particular sort of birth, a natural birth. It's overcoming a lot of stigma and like conditioning and all these sorts of things. So I guess that's some of the work that you do with your clients as well. But it's hard work, and it's reprogramming, and there's all different ways that you can do that with people. And I sort of try and take like a bit of an individual approach in regards to like how we unpack that for that individual person.
I probably should have caveated that. You're right. It was like feels like another whole tangent.
Yeah.
But what I was
That's
actually
fair.
getting at, I'll link that back right now because I mentioned at the start. Now, the reason I mentioned the language and the creation of language within the container, whether that's the mum, the dad, the partnership, the female trying to get pregnant, because there's so many different variations of females trying to get pregnant nowadays in so many different ways.
Person trying to get pregnant, if we're going to stretch it out to the
Oh,
variations of people trying to get pregnant, but yeah.
yeah, 100%. Um, but the language, the reason I mention that is because the whole concept of creating that internal dialogue is what's triggering the initial stages of stress and anxiety in human beings holistically. Now, when cortisol and adrenaline are released into the body, it more often than not becomes an inflammatory product within the body, right? Within the cell, within the tissue. Now, when we're feeding ourselves nutritionally and taking supplements that aren't bioavailable and our imbalance of hormones and gut flora is all out, now we're feeding the anxiety and the stress. We're feeding the inflammation. And then they're getting told more and more, and I say them, bad use of word, but the female or the partnership are getting told more and more, you need to get this, you need to eat this, I'm eating for two. So the language, I felt it ties in because the information that we're provided in terms of how to eat versus what we're telling ourselves are kind of linked with that stress and with that inflammation. And I guess what I was trying to get at uh, is that playing a role? So that whole stress environment or the stress around nutrition, how to eat whole foods, and I'll get you to describe what you would consider whole food, just so people know kind of what you're talking about. Because you ask people how they eat, and they say, "Yeah, I'm eating pretty healthy," and then you listen to what they're eating, you're like, "Oh damn, oh damn."
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, explain to me like what would a nutritional diet in terms of trying to mitigate inflammation, stress within the body, and just being dynamite, ready for pregnancy, creating the perfect environment, like you said, like making this environment for the baby the best and most optimal that it can be. Yeah, talk to me about that.
Well, I guess it's good that you touched on stress, because actually that is, I'd say, even more important than nutrition. And I think sometimes, like, yeah, definitely, like what you said, that there's a lot of stress around nutrition. So it's about balancing that as well, because, yeah, stress causes inflammation. Stress, especially in the very early weeks of pregnancy, when the placenta is really like laying down and starting to develop and grow that the mechanisms that it needs to get all the blood across from the woman through the placenta to the baby. It actually has more impacts on the growth of the baby throughout the pregnancy, due to sort of stress as well. It keeps babies quite small. Smaller babies have more sort of health related issues during birth and afterwards. So yeah, I guess it's about like finding that balance as well of not stressing yourself out around what you're eating, but still trying to put the best things in your body. Definitely, like same with the inflammation sort of thing. A lot of the pregnancy related medical issues that can come up are definitely very like inflammatory based. But in regards to what you should be eating, things that you should be sort of focusing on is yeah, like whole foods that's real, like food that comes from the earth, pretty much, like vegetables, leafy greens, especially in the early, leafy greens throughout pregnancy actually have like a lot of the really important components. So they're full of calcium, they're full of iron, they are full of folic acid, which is the natural form of, folate, which is a natural form of like folic acid that everyone gets told to take. Which, yeah, I have like kind of a bit of like gripe with folic acid as well. Most people don't even convert it into anything in their body. It's completely synthetic. So there is other more bioavailable forms of folic acid that you can take, but ultimately you should be increasing folate in your diet. There's a lot of folate enhanced foods in our population, because they have noticed that obviously most people are low in folate as well. It's because they don't eat leafy greens. Yeah, like I was saying before, like omega's good quality fats. So like organic grass-fed butter. If you're eating meats, you really should be, organ meats are the best sort of meats that you can be eating. You should be eating fish during your pregnancy. You should be eating eggs during your pregnancy. They're two of the most important things that you should be eating. And they're kind of these foods that women avoid because they're like, oh, too much mercury, therefore don't eat any fish, which high mercury is only in, a really small number of fish. Like, yeah, don't get flake from the fish and chip shop, but like invest in some good quality fish. The smaller the better. Salmon is great. Anything with good healthy fats in it, like nuts, avocado. Protein is so important during pregnancy. Protein is like the building block of human cells, pretty much. So if a woman is I've worked with women from a very diverse range of socioeconomic backgrounds, and if a woman can only afford like one thing, I just tell her to eat eggs. Just eat eggs, high in iron, high in protein. Just eat as many eggs as you can. Like, I don't care what else you put in, as long as you're eating eggs. So yeah, what else is important? A lot of like micronutrients that we sort of like don't pay too much attention to. Vitamin A, even though they say too much vitamin A in pregnancy is bad, but there's just so much misconception out there that it really kind of clouds what people think that they can eat. But yeah, ultimately, like in Australia, most foods are we have such high standards with our foods that most food is actually pretty safe to eat. I have a great resource that I refer to quite a lot, a naturopath called Lily Nichols. She has two really great books. One's called Real Food for Pregnancy and one's called Real Food for Gestational Diabetes, because she saw the huge deficit around, like, if you go to a diabetes clinic in an antenatal clinic at a hospital, the things that they tell women to eat during, like, while they've got gestational diabetes, I'm just like, I would never tell a pregnant woman to eat any of that stuff. There's absolutely no it's just completely like nutrient deficient food. They're like low fat yogurt or like yeah, anyway, it's another thing. But so she's a great resource, and she has a website and a blog and an Instagram page. So I check in with her stuff quite frequently. She's someone I refer all pregnant women to. So if it's something that you really sort of have an interest in, she writes it out in a really easy to sort of understand way as well.
Yeah, cool. We'll link that actually in the dialogue when we put it on the post. We'll link her so that so people know where to go as well. And yeah, I mean, if you're sourcing meats, like you're saying, organ meat's absolutely incredible for the body. That I predominantly eat meat, not as many vegetables. I've just done a lot of research into my primal blueprint in learning what my ancestors, essentially the Burnett bloodline, not humans' ancestors, but my ancestors ate, and what was available to them in specific times and specific climates and social dynamics. And so I've learned that way of eating for myself and found that it works really well. Now, why do I say that? I'll explain. If you are going to source meats, and this is for anybody, not just people looking to become pregnant, ethically sourced, go and talk to your butcher, learn where the cows are coming from. At the very least, even go see where the cows and the pigs and the chickens and all of it, even the fish, are coming from. Learn what your food is before you put it in your body. A coach and mentor of mine, Paul Check, he says all the time, stop eating the things that are more dead than you are. And what he's talking about that is, if you're going to eat plants, make sure you're getting organic plants, ethically sourced meats and animal product, eggs as well, same thing. Stop eating caged eggs, and that's the best thing you can do. I'll round that up. Ladies, the power is within you. Like, how many times have we spoken about that? And how many times are women just being convinced by external sources to second guess themselves as becoming mothers? You have superpowers. Just believe in yourself, and that's I think that's a big key takeaway,
Oh, absolutely. Like I want to come back to your talk on nutrition just in a minute, but ultimately, like, I'm still so impressed by how pregnancy even works. Like, I know the ins and outs of pregnancy, and I'm just like, how does that even happen? Literally, like, the baby starts off the size of like a poppy seed, and then like you grow a human inside your body, and then you get that human outside of your body, and then you nourish that human for as long as you nourish it for. Like, it's totally mind-blowing. Like, that is such a powerful thing to do. Just watching women give birth, like, completely blew my mind and just turned me into this, like, woman worshipping, like, kind of person, because I'm just like, so powerful, absolutely incredible. Um, yeah, always impressed. But yeah, I think like two things that you sort of spoke about that I want to talk about too. So firstly, yeah, that you should be following your intuition about what you want to eat as well. Like, you really shouldn't be being told like what foods you need for your body. Like, women have cravings during pregnancy. Sometimes they are linked to certain like deficiencies, and you really should be looking into them. But ultimately, your body and your baby are telling you what they want to eat. I had a great story from a woman who she eats like completely organic. She was vegan at the time. She was eating gluten. During one of her 3 pregnancies, she could not stomach bread at all. Nothing gluten. It would make her completely sick. She'd vomit straight away. Her child is like gluten intolerant, or I mean, potentially even celiac. But anyway, it's like her body already knew that. So it's just about like trusting into that process as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in regards to like where you source your food, so obviously that's, you know, it's totally different for everyone's situation and where they can get their food. But when you're eating meat, I think, or, you know, or anything that's like processed or pre-made or anything, you're not just like eating some chicken. You're eating the growth hormones that have been put into that chicken, and you're eating all the antibiotics that have been put into that chicken, and all the other chemicals that they and, you know, vaccinations and things that they give to those animals. So I think that's something that you need to take into account as well. We should not be like giving as many antibiotics to pregnant women as we do. I think as it stands, it's like 60% of women during pregnancy or birth are administered antibiotics. Like, that's ridiculous. It's like, we're killing all that good bacteria that is absolutely essential for the well-being of that baby and their blueprinting of their long-term health. So yeah, it's just about not forgetting the fact that if you are consuming animals, then they have also been given antibiotics, unless you're buying organic food. The same with, yeah, different people requiring different sorts of food as well. Like, I know there's like like different people with different blood types, like they should eat different things and things like that. Like, I didn't notice until like recently that my blood type was one of the ones that was like kind of adverse to eating meat. And as you know, I don't eat meat. But one of the main reasons I don't is because like I don't want to consume the energy of an animal that hasn't been well looked after, or just in general, like that has been killed. So yeah, I think putting intention into when you're making yourself something to eat. You know, if you're growing your own vegetables, like putting love into those vegetables, like when you grow up, like that's the energy that you're consuming. So if you're consuming bad foods, well, of course you're going to feel shit. And I'm pretty blunt with women when I say that. If they're feeling crappy and low and kind of depressed during their pregnancy, I'm like, what are you eating? If you're putting shit food in your body, you're going to feel shit. Like, ultimately, that's how it works. There's no way around that. And I know it's hard because like when you feel shit, you want to eat shit food, but it's about sort of like breaking out of that cycle and like putting good things in your body, not just for, you know, if the motivation for you just feeding yourself good foods isn't enough, like you're literally determining the health of your baby for their entire lifetime. So yeah, feed into that.
Yeah, and you can on that energetically, like if you're feeling shit and you're eating shit, but also like, what's your environment like? Like,
Yeah.
you know, like who are you with? How are you talking? Like, there's a lot of things that play a role in that. And yeah, like that intention into food's huge. I recently just discovered the power of blessing my food and giving me energy and just thanking it, you know, like I obviously don't have you know, I ethically source my meat because I know where it comes from. I know the farm it comes from. I know how those animals are actually slaughtered. But I eat from that one place, and that's it. And the meat that I do eat is organic. It's all grass fed. All the cows and the pigs and everything's like free range. It's just like this holiday resort for all the animals and the livestock.
Yeah, until a certain point.
But when I'm blessing my food, I'm energetically saying, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being, essentially feeding me and allowing my body to, flourish from the nutrients from that. And just the same with your veggies. If you go and sing to your plants, go and sing to your veggies, put some music on around the tree, and just
Yeah.
being happy and jovial moods around your plants. I mean, I've known people that can sing their plants back to life, and it's so true. I've got a few cacti in and around this joint, and like I'll go talk to them and sing to them, and people,
Yeah.
but
It's such a thing.
they're growing well, like.
It absolutely works. Look, there's experiments that they have done with that, and there's some videos floating around Facebook and stuff about like two plants in a school, and like the kids are really nice to one plant and really horrible to the other plant, and then like the difference between the plants, like it's not hard. Like no one can deny that energy exists. If you
Yeah,
talk to someone like shit, they're gonna feel shit. If you
yeah,
talk to someone really well, like really positively and uplifting, and like you're encouraging them, well, like instantaneously they feel better and have better energy.
yeah.
So it just makes sense.
Two things I wanted to touch on real quick before we move on. You mentioned cravings, and a lot of mums during pregnancy have cravings. Some of them are legit, ladies. Listen
Hmm.
to your body,
Yeah.
intuitively. I have learned this year that a female's intuition or gut feeling it's a superpower. If pregnancy is not a superpower, this intuition from females is a superpower.
Yeah.
And listen to your bodies in terms of what you're eating. Now, that's not to say if you're craving chocolate regularly, go and eat chocolate. More often than not, that refers exactly what you were saying.
A
Exactly.
magnesium.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And also leafy greens as well, like
Yeah.
the gut lives off that. And if you're unsure, something I throw to my clients all the time, just to get in tune with your body, to start listening, you can do like muscle testing. It's a real basic
Hmm.
kind of kinesiology test. You do,
Yep.
you just make this duck bill, and you ask the body, dear body, do I feel like eggs today? And squeeze, applying pressure. Now, if there's resistance, it's a yes. It's a firm yes. If there's no resistance, you're lying internally to your body. Your nervous system knows you're lying. It's not going to give you any strength to support the lie. You've obviously got to be quite honest with yourself when doing the muscle test, but it's an easy test when you go to the fridge. As a pregnant woman, I've seen my wife so many times. First of all, she goes to the fridge and she's like, "What's my shoe doing in the fridge?" Takes the shoe out and it's like, "What do I feel like eating?" 10 minutes later, still haven't decided. Ask the body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen to the body, and get a line, and you'll find, probably speaking outside my lane, but during pregnancy, the more you listen and become aligned with your body,
So important.
the outcome will just be exactly what you want and exactly how you envisioned it and exactly the dream that you imagined created.
Mm.
Yeah, go. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, no, I also like use muscle testing as well. My housemate, one of my old housemates did it for food as well, but I'm like, no, I don't want to listen to you. I'm just gonna eat what I want. But yeah, I do it a little bit differently. But I think the easiest one to do is like a sway test. So if you're standing up, and you can check with your body first, like what the response is. So you can just like say your name, and then you like sway forward for yes, and it's for no, it's a sway backwards. So then, yeah, you can sort of like test your body, like by asking it things that are true and not true that you know about, and sort of like see what happens. Pregnancy does throw off your center of balance though, so maybe it might be different for pregnancy, but yeah, that's a good one to try if you can't quite get the I do this one. I like hold my finger, and then like a no is, you can easily pull through, and the yeses are locked. But yeah, that's a good one as well. And I think, yeah, touching into your intuition, and tapping into that, and also like get in tune with your baby as well. It's like your baby is literally inside you. They could not be any closer to you or any more connected than they ever will be again. So like just trust that they also have knowledge and intuition around how, the pregnancy birth is going to unfold as well. I think during pregnancy, women, I explain it as like women have like a thinning of the veil. they are deeply intuitive and deeply spiritual. Even it surprises like some women. They're kind of like, okay, I've never experienced this. It's not usually, how I am inclined. But there's something that happens during pregnancy, and I think it's just because, it's a completely, absolutely like magical, spiritual, intuitive kind of space that it's so special to be in. So absolutely tap into that. When I'm looking after a woman and she tells me that something is wrong, then something is wrong. We could do every test under the sun. If everything comes back completely fine, but she still tells me that something is wrong, something is wrong. Yep. We, especially I work for a home birth practice, so we're not very big on the pushing of the medical interventions unless it actually is very necessary. But if a woman comes to me and she's just like, my baby needs to be born, then all right, her baby needs to be born.
That's what it is, and guiding that and holding that space for them to go through that journey and know.
Yeah. But like the way our system works, like with a maternity system and it being completely medical, is completely undermines the woman's knowledge, intuition, her experience. It just it makes women question everything about themselves. So then when it comes to labor and birth, they don't tune into their intuition, their own, innate knowledges, their own personal power, because it's being questioned from the pregnancy throughout, for the whole time. So they look to external people to help get them through that process, which they completely have the tools to get through if they check into them. So that's ultimately kind of what I do when I help prepare women for labor and birth. I give you some tools practical tools that you can use, but ultimately I pretty much support the fact that you are powerful and to tune into your own abilities. Because no one else is going to be able to birth the baby other than that woman. So why do we take that power away from her? I know why. Because powerful women are scary. The world can't have powerful women in it. It's not going to flow with the current paradigm that we have. We have to take the power away.
And we've been doing it for millions of years, and yet all of a sudden.
I know. How did they do it beforehand? It makes no sense because women can't do it now. So. Look, how. Yeah. Anyway.
No, it does. It grinds.
I think we're getting not smarter at all.
I hate hearing stories where couples have been so excited about going into labour and finally meeting their babies for the first time. 9+ months. It's 9+ months. It's not actually 9 months. 10 months. Depending.
First lie they've told you, it's 10 months.
Some babies are born earlier, some are born later. They're excited, and I hate hearing stories about how they go into labour, they're about to give birth, and some meathead doctor comes in and thinks that he knows more about her body and pregnancy than she does and starts dictating what to do. Grinds my gears.
Yeah, try working in that situation as well.
Mate,
anyway,
you can't do this. She knows more than you.
Well,
I'll leave that there for that. But it kind of touches on what I wanted to get into next, which both you and I are very, very passionate about. And that is trauma within the body and generational trauma as well, and healing that generational trauma. And I think just to start that point before, because I know you love this as well, but just to start that point, if you're looking to conceive or you are thinking about having a baby eventually, but know that there's some shit you got to heal, get it done. I cannot, it is such an important role to own your own space and own your own power and know exactly what's going on within the body, physically, energetically, spiritually. And if you get that shit healed prior to, the journey's just that much more beautiful. I'm not saying that you can't do it during, because I'm supporting my wife currently, healing some.
It happens anyway. It comes up anyway during pregnancy.
Yeah. So, and you know what? I feel honored to witness her power in doing that during pregnancy, because like you alluded to at the start, being pregnant is like working out 24/7 and not really getting much sleep because baby wants to work out while you're trying to sleep. And then you're healing your shit, and then you might be looking after another child as well. It is a lot.
Yeah, and we expect women to work as well during that time. Oh, and look after the household, do all the things. Yeah, have a real thing with it.
let's jump in on that trauma because I know, like, yeah, we're very passionate about that, and I'd love to dive
Yeah.
deep.
I would even sort of like backtrack to the not if you know that you have trauma to heal, but like I just think by default everybody does. We carry everyone else's shit. Like even if you either don't recall or don't feel like anything particularly negative has happened to you in your life, well, we've currently just gone through a massive collective trauma. Like we all carry trauma. And I know it's a huge like kind of buzzword at the moment, but I'm so glad it's getting the attention that it needs, because if we're going to change how our world is, it's firstly with us dealing with all the shit, and not passing that on to our next generation, so that they can absolutely thrive without carrying everything that we've had to carry up until here. Yeah, I definitely think it's one to work on even prior to getting pregnant. Um, Sometimes I would even say it prevents some people from getting pregnant because they have they're carrying all these subconscious things, maybe around their own birth, maybe around how they were parented, maybe it's from their parents, that they are sort of playing out in a way that they're subconsciously telling their body like having a child is a terrible idea. Why would you want to do that? Like it's going to end up like this or whatever. So yeah, sort of like tapping into anything like that you're carrying and working with it beforehand, I think can even help you in your conception journey. During like I'm a big one for trauma being held in the body and manifesting itself into physical ailments, which I don't know, I'm glad that that's becoming more of a sort of like thing that we're acknowledging, and see how evident it is. So for women in general, we sort of tend to store a lot of our trauma in our pelvis, particularly like sexual related trauma. And I would say that's the vast majority of women carry some sort of sexual related trauma. So we're storing all that in our pelvis. It's manifesting in things like polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, inability to get pregnant, painful periods. It's playing out in all these ways. And it's like, hey, 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 I'm trying to get your attention, until if you keep ignoring it, just gets louder and louder and louder. So lots of, yeah, trauma held in the pelvis. So what does that mean for during pregnancy? So all the ligaments and muscles and things, they're holding all this trauma, they have this tension. It can, cause your like uterus or your pelvis to sort of like be out of balance. Growing uterus comes along, it's got a baby in it, it's getting heavier, your ligaments are stretching, your muscles are feeling, tension because they're carrying more weight in different pressure points around your pelvis that haven't particularly been pressed on before, and it's starting to release all this stuff. So also that in additional, you're also sort of thinking about, the sort of mother that you're going to be, the sort of childhood that you had. Like so much stuff comes up during pregnancy for some women, so they don't necessarily have an awareness that this is going to come up, but whether you're ready or not, it kind of does. So I think it's so important to do different modalities of healing during your pregnancy beforehand, whether that's like breath work, acupuncture, kinesiology. I don't know, throw any more out there, but there's so many things that you can do that you can resonate with. Internal pelvic work, which is like one that's not particularly heard about, but one that I'm definitely interested in learning more, like down that avenue as well. But even just like pelvic related yoga poses. Before I teach a class and before I would do these poses with women, I would be like, okay, just so you know, stretching these ligaments and muscles potentially can bring up some emotions. And I was like, that's just a disclaimer, because I don't want to put this on you without you having any awareness that something might come up. And then you go into labor and birth, and then huge amounts of pressure in your pelvis from the baby, you're stretching ligaments and muscles, your cervix is stretching out of the way. Like it brings up so much stuff, and I see it play out in like as a narrative, like in women, in a lot of women's labors. And some women, you know, potentially they do have more stuff to process, so their labor journeys are potentially a little bit longer than someone who doesn't have so much stuff to process.
Yeah.
So if you can do that emotional work prior to labor and birth, great. You're potentially kind of like taking some of that work, all those emotions, you know, you're clearing it before that process as well. And this is this is kind of just a concept that I was just seeing play out a lot, especially because I've for the last 3 years worked in a continuity model, which means that I know the women who I'm looking after during labor and birth. And then I talk to them afterwards, and I'm with them throughout their labor journey. And it's like, sometimes it's like a play. It's like women go through all these different phases, and like all these different aspects of themselves come up. And sometimes they just really need to be supported, and sometimes they just really need to be alone. It's like this, like, I don't know, a journey that kind of like plays out. And then to speak with the women afterwards and have them like affirm to me that, yeah, this stuff was coming up, I was having to process this, or you know, like for some reason all these emotions about my childhood were coming up during my labor journey. Like, I don't know, I honestly, like, it's so similar to like an ayahuasca journey sometimes. It's just like you're processing all these different things, you're going through all these different layers. There's a lot of vomiting sometimes. Like, it's just like I sit there and it's kind of so similar, and I'm like, and I'm just here holding space for that journey, and you know, you going through the processes that you need to go through. And I think when women aren't prepared for that sort of thing to come up, that's when they want to escape their labors, and then that's when they want to get away from the pain, because they're like, hey, I didn't like sign up for this. I didn't know that all my childhood traumas would be coming to the surface while I'm trying to, you know, go through labor and give birth. Like, I'm going to tap out and get an epidural because I can't deal with like all this that's coming to the surface right now. Like, get me out of here.
Yeah, the pain's not the thing. It's the
Yeah,
emotional that's coming to the surface.
absolutely. Yeah.
Very, yeah. Look, plant medicine is, yeah. Look, both of you and I are big plant medicine advocates in terms of healing trauma and moving into spiritual growth and transition. And I can 100% say that it is, yeah, it's changed my life in all aspects.
Absolutely.
And the big one, I guess, as well is breath work. And
Hmm.
I'm a breathwork facilitator practitioner, and I follow a lot of. I just say that when I facilitate breathwork, my main aim is for the person to meet themselves. You know,
Hmm.
so everybody arrives with an outcome in mind, or hey, I just want to get high off my own supply, or hey, I saw Wim Hof do this and I think it's cool, I want to give it a go. But what people don't know, and you said it perfectly, is uh, trauma manifesting in the body physically, and it stores in the tissue. And what keeps it there is CO2. Carbon dioxide
Hmm.
actually holds on to trauma and manifests within the tissue on a cellular level. So when we go through these very cathartic breath protocols and start that diffusion and create an upheaval of like carbon dioxide out of the body, because we're starting to disperse a lot more of it from the heavy breathing, that's when the shit's coming to the surface. And that sometimes can be just as good as an ayahuasca ceremony or a psilocybin ceremony, is just going for a big old 45-minute hard out breath session and just letting it all come to the surface. I think the biggest cry, snotty, sobbing cry that I've ever had was from like a breathwork session.
Yeah.
And like you said, everything just comes to the surface. And I think in itself, it carries its own power. So if you can get to it pre-conception, I don't know, I see it a lot. Like, you just see this power. It just changes people, when you deal with and heal trauma. It's just like, yep, I'm good. I'm good now. Like, I know what's going to happen. I've met my baby. I don't know how many times I've sat with people in ayahuasca ceremonies and they're like, hey, yeah, I met my child. How
Yeah.
amazing. And
I've met all my children.
like,
And
it's
I'm
incredible.
so glad like conscious conception is like coming into the dialogue now. But yeah, absolutely. And it was in breathwork. Like the first breathwork session that I had was like absolutely blasted open the doors to me living a completely different life.
Yeah.
And I've achieved everything that I've set out to achieve since I've done that. And it's because I'm releasing a lot of the trauma that is, it's not even mine, especially as women, we like our maternal lineage is very, very strong and connected. So even from when you're, in your mother's womb, you already have all your like eggs for your future children. So that we carry that lineage very, very, very closely. They're like, so that's what most of my like sort of breathwork sessions have been connecting into and releasing. And I think the great thing about breathwork is obviously it's you have, it is your power and you have complete control over it as well. Maybe unlike a like plant medicine ceremony where it kind of like blasts you open and kind of like you don't have control over where it's going to take you necessarily. You just have to like hang on for the ride. Like with breath work, if you're not ready, the stuff that you're not ready to deal with won't come up.
Yeah.
And I think like the important thing with like working with trauma and healing your trauma and like being free of your trauma and doing that work is people are scared to do it because they don't want to relive their trauma. And I feel like if you're trying a modality that's making you relive your trauma, like particularly like talk therapy, it's not healing you. It's potentially like re-traumatizing you, or traumatizing the person that you're talking to. I think the great thing about breath work is you don't have to relive an experience. You might have a huge emotional like experience that is potentially the same emotions that you're feeling at the time that that trauma occurred, but you don't necessarily have to remember the details and relive that experience in order to release it. It's just, that's why breath work I think is so great. You have complete control. If you don't want to keep going with it, stop breathing. Like, well, not altogether, but like you can just stop doing a heavy breath protocol. I don't want to breathe anymore. No, I don't want anymore to come up. But, yeah, but it's and like you can do it during pregnancy. I think it's a fantastic thing to do during pregnancy.
Yeah, I actually added it to, so when I run consults now, when I work with people for the first time, one of the first questions I ask is, can you tell me about your birthing journey and know from your mum, and then ask about her mum's birthing and then her grandma's, and then I dive deeper into the family history that way so that I get a good aspect. And it's not always females, sometimes it's males as well. But 100% for women out there, if you're noticing irregularities straight out the gate, do some homework straight out before seeking professional help, which I strongly advise for people like yourself, or even holistic midwives that are around your area. Reach out, but do your homework first, so that when you do get to those professionals, you can say, well, look, mum had a traumatic experience giving birth to me or my brothers or my siblings. Grandma had this or whatnot, and it paints a bigger picture. In terms of the healing, there's two people that are really cool for people and we can link to this as well. So Dr. Gabor Mate, I know you've heard a bit of his stuff. So he talks about healing ancestral trauma as well. And there's a study that they did of a Jewish woman through the war and what her bloodline looked like thereafter, and a lot of her children and their children actually had health issues based upon the trauma that she had experienced during the war. To second that, there's another guy, Dr. Viktor E. Frankl. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, and he was actually a prisoner of war in the Nazi camps, and he'd gone through like 6 to 8 different camps, but he was a psychologist, and he pioneered what we know as logotherapy. And logotherapy essentially was healing trauma through exposure to the trauma, or reliving the emotional state that was attached to the original trauma. In the medical society, we know it as variolation. So if we're gonna condition our bodies to be tolerant to a disease or virus, we expose the body to the virus or the disease gradually and build it. It's called variolation. So we build a tolerance, and the same can be done emotionally as well. So those two doctors, really cool. If people are into that, into the traumatic healing and the breath work as well, really cool stuff. On the breath work, tell me about your ice bath experience, because I mean that was some wicked stuff.
I will. I really want to tell you a story about the times that I've seen women replay out their mother's births with them as well. But I don't know, what should I do first?
Whatever your heart's telling you. I'm here to listen to both.
I'll go with what we were talking about. I've like asking a woman about her own birth and the births that her mother had is part of our general practice. Like any midwife or any sort of person taking a pregnancy history will ask into that, whether they actually pay attention to how much relevance it has or not. Or in regards to a blueprinting sort of sense, like absolutely not, probably. But for myself, very much so. The first time I saw it play out was with a woman who was planning like a home birth. She had put absolutely everything in place. She said she'd like learned everything, you know, worked really hard to like get her mindset into birthing, thought birth was normal, all these sorts of things. She ended up transferring into hospital because after a long time of pushing, her baby's literally, you could see the baby's head, it just wasn't coming out. And it'd been like that for a number of hours at home before they came in. So they really were trying absolutely everything to get this baby out. And they're like, it's just, we don't know. We're like perplexed. It's just sitting there. It's so close, but it's not coming. And then, so the woman ended up having a very easy, like assisted birth with a vacuum on the baby's head and literally just pull the baby out. And it's all it needed and everything was fine. But the woman was being supported by her mother and her auntie when she was at home, and they came into hospital with her. And then the mother goes, oh, it's, you know, like, even though you planned a home birth, like, don't feel bad. Like, I also had a vacuum birth with her. And she was like, oh, I didn't know that. I was like, oh, okay, there's something here. Yeah. And now that I've spoken to so many women about it, it's replaying the narrative unless you've done the healing around it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be your mum healing her own trauma around her birth. You can absolutely heal your own trauma around your own birth as well, which, you know, we've like done some of that together. In some of the sessions that we've sort of like done, is that's what I was focusing on. Not that I even had a bad birth, I had a great birth. My brother, not so much. And you can absolutely see it in between, like with our different personalities. And just, it's just so interesting how your birth impacts on like who you are, especially as an adult, and the, you know, the patterns that you play out in your life. And I've actually written a big workshop to do on it, and I was planning on doing it this year, but COVID. So 2021, watch this space. I'm doing a workshop about why it matters how you're born, and then like how to pick those things out in your own life and what to do about them.
Yeah.
My ice bath experience. Wow. I don't even think I can like put words to that experience. It was like, I went in with the intention of sort of pushing myself to the limits, because I was at the time thought I was supposed to be training for a big overseas expedition through the Papua New Guinea jungle. So I kind of like felt like I needed to do some kind of like push myself and see what my limits are, like kind of work. So I thought it would be great. But it, what did it bring up? So I think the breath protocols that we learned beforehand and all that work is like absolutely invaluable like skills that I think everyone should be shown how to use and how to access in ourselves. But it like that day was the ultimate access of my own power that I didn't even know that I had. And I do a lot of stuff like that anyway, and I do like to push myself. So, you know, it's not like I hadn't dabbled before, but just to, I think it was definitely you holding that space. So I felt so safe to sort of like absolutely see what my limits were in that point in time. But yeah, it was incredible. It was so many different emotions came up while I was in the ice bath, and I had no real goal about like how long I would be in there for, or even what it was going to feel like. Like, I love jumping in the ocean, like even in the winter and it's cold, but like I see that more as a like, I don't know, just because it's nature, I can do it sort of thing. But like just being cold in general, like I have a phobia of like being cold. I hate the snow, I hate being cold, like just super whingy about it. So I'm like, I don't know how this is going to go. I don't even like the cold. But yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to put into words, but I felt so powerful, and it was the biggest release, and all this stuff came up that I didn't even really know was there. I think that's what's so great around this healing work. It's like, shit, I didn't even know I was carrying that, but like I feel so much lighter like since doing it and releasing it. And I think like kind of like once it's released, it's like awesome. If it's not necessarily going to come back.
and you like create space. I feel like you create
Oh
space.
yeah, absolutely. In your whole life. Like when you
Yeah,
do this work, like you're not carrying the shit anymore. You're not feeling heavy. Like you have so much more energy to put towards like creative ventures. Like this is like my business in general, just from where I was when I first had the idea, and the huge amount of healing work that I've done since then. Like there's no way I could have done this before I started down this path. Like
yeah.
I just didn't have the capacity to be able to deal with it because I was so busy dealing with my own shit that I didn't even know I was dealing with.
We mask it like yeah, we just mask it with distractions, and it's
Yeah.
yeah, that was one of the most incredible days. I could just feel like I was in absolute awe. Like I just yeah, you just feel the power of like
Mm.
what you were going through, and yeah, I vividly remember seeing things that you were seeing after we discussed art, and I
That's
like
great.
hearing what I was seeing, and then you're like, I was seeing that too, and I was like, I wasn't even talking to you, like, and
No, you just like you were just there and present and holding space. And like honestly, that's exactly what I do for women when they're giving birth, like or when we're preparing for their birth. It's literally like you just need someone to be present and to heal you. I think I saw a great quote recently that said the first step to healing trauma is being heard.
yeah,
And
that's
I'm
big.
just like, yeah.
That's
And that's not even necessarily like I have to tell you about my traumatic experience. Can you sit down and listen while I like blurt this out to you? It's like no, you need to feel heard.
yeah,
Like okay, I need someone to be like, yeah, that was like a really, or just validating your feelings about how you're feeling about something. It's like yeah, I hear you. Like that's all you have to say. You don't have to like solve people's problems because that's also taking their power away as well. Like when we're doing this work, especially like why breath work is so great because you're healing yourself. Like you're not relying on anyone else. You might have someone holding the space for you, but ultimately you're the one that's doing that work. You're the one that's accessing your own power. And you take that forward and take that, those new skills forward in your life. And then, yeah, I think that's a great way to prepare for your birth because I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's not painful. It's hard work. But if you know your ultimate potential and your power, then like of course you're going to trust that you can do it.
yeah, and you're gonna feel into that. Like it's one thing to know, but then once you feel that power, you're just like,
Mm.
yeah, you can't be just unstoppable. That actually ties in really well to one of the last things I wanted to talk about, and you were saying about holding space, but like tribe. I know we spoke about this previously, but yeah, like how important is tribe? And when I say tribe, I mean, your community, your sphere of influence, the people that have your back, the people that are there holding the space, pre-baby, post-baby, what like during, like, and you definitely fit that role for all the women that you care for. Like you obviously become part of that tribe because you do hold that space and you're incredible at doing it. And then again, as a sister and part of our community, like I see that a lot. But yeah, I know you've worked in some quite remote areas of Australia and even abroad as well. You've worked in some remote cultures and seen different aspects of tribe. I feel you are the perfect person to give a description of how important it is.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I have so many thought trains going through my head right now. But I guess, okay, I'll start with this. When you're pregnant and you're planning your birth, choose the people that look after you.
Hmm.
I think building your community around you in regards to even your healthcare providers or people who you are utilizing to support your healing modalities, or even your physical health as well. Choose those people and choose people that have the same philosophy as you and will support you to do the things that you want to do. So ultimately, like the biggest determinant of someone having a C-section is who they choose as their care provider. So that's why it's so important to pick out people who you align with. So if you have a real intention to have a natural drug-free labor and birth, but you're going to hire an obstetrician to look after you, you're pushing an uphill battle. Like that's not going to happen. Or if it does, like that, the chances of it happening are very slim, and it's probably comes down to a lot of luck. or you've chosen a like-minded obstetrician. If you just go through the flow of the hospital system, same, you're going to come across a lot of resistance because they don't necessarily have the same mentality or the same goal that you have. So yeah, choosing the people who look after you, creating that circle as well, because ultimately, like, especially if I look after some, not even especially, like, you form such a deep connection with like your midwife as like during your pregnancy. There's some people who I look after preconception. Some people come to me very early in pregnancy. Some people come to me because they've changed their care provider a week before they give birth, and feeling connected to, safe, held by that person is so important during labor and birth and the early postpartum period as well, because you are really vulnerable during that time. Like, so much transformation and change is happening, you know, and you go into like a really sort of like vulnerable space where you have to be doing all this like psychological work, that, you know, you want people around you who are going to make you feel safe, so in order for you to do that, and for you, and who aren't going to take that power away from you. And there's that saying then that, like, moving forward, that it takes a village to raise a child. It absolutely does. Like, to put so much pressure on a woman or even a couple to like raise a child is like, it's kind of cruel. Like, kids don't sleep. We know this. Like, and sleep deprivation is like, it changes your mind. So to like put so much pressure on like couples looking after like a child without any additional support, also that child misses out. Like, when you build community around you, like, your child has so many people to learn off, like, you have so many people to support you and lean on, and like, you know, you form a network and you all help each other out. So finding that community as well is really, really important.
Because it's a spiritual process. Like, it's not a clinical
Absolutely.
process, you know. Like,
Yeah.
and when it goes into the hospital system, that whole spiritual ideology is just completely removed and ignored. And it's like, well, you know, this, like we said before, it's been going on for billions of years. You know, this is a spiritual sanctity that women actually go through, and it's not up to anyone else to take that power away. So encouraging and being on the same vibe, on the same level, embracing her strength, because at that most vulnerable stage where she's gone from being this, we'll just say in her infancy, to within an hour stepping into a new phase of being like, I'm a mum now and I've just got the hardest job in the world.
Yeah.
Like, that transition is like, be kind, people. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be kind.
Yeah. It's a total transformation. It's like women literally kind of like, you know, their heart totally like bursts open and like grows bigger in order to like facilitate like loving a baby. But a lot of women during labor sometimes, especially during that transition period, will say like they feel like they're dying. And like, that sounds like a really scary thing, obviously, because like we don't, like, that's an obviously very real fear for a lot of women around the world. But like, if you look at it more in a spiritual sense, like, yeah, that woman as who she is currently is dying. That she's shedding away all the things that she doesn't need to take forward into her mothering journey. She's changing that archetype from into being a mother and stepping into that new role. And like, yeah, there's so much that you have to shed and get rid of and break down. And it's like, it's totally like, you know, the phoenix rising from the flames. It's like labor is hard work, and then you go through that process, and then you just like arise as a mother. Like, it's a huge deal. And it's not just, you know, that happens once when you have your first baby. It's like, it happens every single time you have a baby, because then you're a mother of 2, and then you're a mother of 3, and like, you have to go through this transformation every time.
Yeah, and that support there is super important.
Yeah.
Super important.
Yeah.
It's you know, like stepping, like, I know for sure, like, you know, we've obviously got Bill, our young fella, and we've got 2 other daughters as well. But I know as soon as, like, you know, our close friends and family are like, hey, why don't you guys just go out for the night? It's like, you get a chance to revisit this old person that kind of doesn't exist anymore, but you get to witness just how much you've changed and how beautiful that is. Because I know how, like, so many times, probably more Cass than me, but we'd be sitting with dinner and we're like, oh, can't wait to get home to the kids, you know? And it's like, It's such a big transition, and like you just put that perfectly. Even the second and third baby, because
Mm.
you're not superhero mum with one child now. You're superhero mum, ultra nine level 9,000 with two kids, and then when you have three kids, you become a completely different character again, and like
Yeah.
completely shedding and moving forward. That's why it's a good idea to try and heal your trauma preconception, because you've got a whole lot of other things coming up ahead, and but all beautiful just the same.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of people, I think maybe especially for the partner of the woman who's about to give birth, but like are really scared of change, and they're scared of the unknown, and they don't want things to change, and there's, they kind of like might not form that deep connection and really be involved because they're like, oh well, this is going to change my life. I've heard such terrible things because our society, the same as the way it talks about birth, it talks horribly about parenting,
Yeah,
about how you're gonna like not be able to do anything. You might as well like give up all your inhibitions, like all your dreams and goals, like out the window. Don't even worry about it. It's like it doesn't actually have to be like that at all. Like
yeah,
some women take that transformation, like especially if they've had a really positive, empowered birth experience, they take that transformation and turn it into their personal power. Like the
mhm,
great woman Lani, who's from Sage Birthing, like I
oh,
looked
yeah,
after her after she had her baby postpartum. She started her business 3 months after she had a baby. She
true.
was just like, yep, ready to go. I'm inspired. I feel so powerful. I feel so capable. And that was her fourth child. And
Yeah,
she's done it all because she's like, she had a fantastic birth experience. And it really plays out into your life, as does when you have a really challenging, really disempowering experience where your power was taken away from you. That has flow-on effects in your life and for your family as well. So this is why it's important.
mm,
It's not just about the birth. Like the birth is such a small part, but it's so integral.
yeah, yeah, and it's a powerful thing. I think I think that's a good place to leave it.
Yeah,
I think that's good. That was incredible. Like I know
we
every time,
went on a journey,
yeah, we journey hard, don't we? I
as
mean,
we always do.
journey hard. I will refer to though, like um, my transitional period, and this just goes to show how powerful you actually are. I'm kind of plugging you. I'm plugging you right now. That's what I think the kids are. The
Fine,
kids,
go for it.
like when you hold space, like that night that I ran that full moon ceremony where we buried ourselves underground and in the front yard, and what there was just me and then yourself, Cass, Jade, and Casey. So this incredible group of goddesses, and yeah, you just have this way of holding space, and just you can just feel you because you just this strong energy. So you know anyone who gets to have you by their side during any birth is is a lucky person. So thank you for being the beautiful person that you are, and being in my life and everybody else's life, because you are a true force to be reckoned with. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's very much appreciated. And yeah, definitely something that I've really grown into, I think. I think it's one of the most important things about being a midwife. You can be as smart as anything, but if you don't know how to read people and hold space, then you're a terrible midwife. Like, and it's so reflective to so many other situations. I've been definitely being able to hold space for people in completely different, you know, avenues of their life, because that's all. It's people being heard. That's what it is. You're like, I'm here for you, like, and taking the ego out of it, I think. And if you just go with that concept, then that's how you do it, I guess. You know, but yeah, definitely right back at you as well. I feel like on my own sort of healing journey that I've been on, I'd say at least for the past 5 years or so, I've definitely been able to do some of the deepest unraveling and healing with yourself by my side, because I've felt completely held and safe to like go to those depths that I needed to, because yeah, you're my lifeline. I'm like, okay, take me out now.
Yeah, we've had some that's for sure,
Yeah,
and many more to come. There's some we won't talk too much, but yeah, there's some big things coming
I'm
in
so excited.
the future. Me too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think yeah, everyone's
Well,
in for a treat.
Why don't you let people know where they can find you on your social medias and website? And yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, Down to Birth Midwifery is my business name. You can find that under that same name as on my website. Great way to get in touch is to email me. I like to sort of like keep the thread all together so I don't lose track of who I'm talking to. But also on Instagram as well is where I spend probably most of my time just in general. So you usually find me there. Yeah, I try and be pretty expressive with what I do. So I'm always putting content up that's related to what I'm working on at the time. So
fantastic,
too.
fantastic. Well, we'll leave it there, and then until next time, we'll revisit and go deeper again.
Great. Thank you so much for having this chat with me.
Time and being in this space, and as usual, going deep.
Don't go any other way.
All right. Well, yeah. Thanks for spending the time with me, and we'll talk more. And yeah, we'll link to all those things in the dialogue. And yeah, it was amazing. Love to you.
Love to you too, brother.
See you, sis.